coming up on the Lead Ministry Podcast.
You need a place where you can let your hair down. You can like literally take off your armor, show your sweat, show your scars. You need somebody you can be absolutely fundamentally and ultra vulnerable with. If you don't have that, you are bound for burnout.
Now your host, Josh Denhart.
Hey gang, welcome back to another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. I gotta let you know I'm so excited about this one. I got goosebumps, people. Here we are. It's the start of another podcast, and I'm very excited because I think this is a message that you need to hear, and it's about how to avoid burnout, how to stay in the game and stay healthy. Listen, you have a calling you need to fulfill on your calling, and burnout is that dark, insidious figure that is looking to trash you and take you out. Doesn't have to, though. And so today, Bill and I are talking about how you, yes, you, can have the means, the tools at your disposal to avoid this thing, burnout. Bill, I got to tell you, you are one of the ways that I don't burn out, buddy. That's the truth.
Yeah, ditto. And I'm super excited to jump into this part of our little burnout series here because I think this is going to be so valuable.
Yeah, I think this is going to be transformational for people. So if you're listening, here we go. Now, gang, here's the deal. We're talking about this silent killer in ministry. It's silent, it's insidious, it's unspoken, but it is burnout. Our goal is to explore today how the unnoticed stress and gradual fatigue can actually undermine your effectiveness in ministry. It's the unnoticed stress that's just mounting and mounting and mounting, and you think you're all alone and you think that you're unique. You're not unique. You're experiencing what I would call a good case of the normals.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked in the last two episodes, we really defined burnout and how bad it really is, okay? But now we're going to turn the corner and start talking about critical solutions. And so this episode is about critical relationships. You need relationships in order to survive in ministry. Okay, here's a critical relationship. This is how we define this. Well, this is our define part, right? Learning how building a supportive network of peers and mentors can serve as a powerful defense against burnout, keeping your passion high and your well-being intact. So guess what? You want your passion high? The answer is yes. You want your well-being intact? Big time. Guess what, team? You need peers and you need mentors. It's about people. Well, it kind of teed it up a little bit. As you know on the podcast, we have three big buckets for your brain to categorize this information. We want to define it. We're going to define this. We're going to develop it. And then we're going to have some calls to action to do it. So here's this define it piece. We're going to define what is a ministry definition of a critical relationship. It is, here it is, friendships that understand the unique pressures of ministry, but do not go to your church.
Yeah. This is so key because if they do go to your church, you could run into some more trouble.
That's exactly right. And we need these critical relationships, but we have to make sure that these critical relationships are outside of our church. Now, stick with me for a minute. Bill, does that mean I can't have any friends at my church?
No, you can definitely have friends at your church. It's just that you're going to need friends outside of your church to talk about what's going on inside of your church.
Preach that all day long. Okay, so what is unique about what we're calling ministry friends? Now, this is not friends. Okay, you got your pals at church that you can't wait to see around the cup of coffee. You're checking in on their family. They're a part of your small group. You're doing life together. That is friends. What we're talking about today is you ministry friends. Now, Bill, you and I are ministry friends. We live in a ministry context. We share notes about the hard things about ministry. Here it is. This is the big giveaway. In a ministry context, we must have outside people and inside people. But guess what? Those inside people, they are not inside of your church.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk about this as we develop this deeper. So you got to have friends who understand ministry, but they can't go to your church. We're calling these outside friends. They need to be outside of your church. They need to be outside your town, and they need to be outside your denomination. So here's the first big bucket. You need to have outside friends. Now let's talk deeper about outside your church. Listen in, your banker friend who's in your small group can say, my boss is driving me nuts. Well, guess what? They can say that in your small group, and we're all going to rally around the banker and go, oh man, that is such a terrible, you mean they did that? Yeah, my banker boss did that. Well, that's I bet you that hurt. Yeah, I bet you that you wished it went this way. Yeah, so we're counseling him in small group. Our banker friend, we give him the right and the freedom to say that his boss is driving him nuts. Hey, guess what, pastor? Children's pastor, youth pastor, missions pastor at your church that's listening to this podcast, you can't say that your boss is driving you nuts in the small group because your boss is their senior pastor.
That is so true. And they're automatically, if you just went into your small group and you're like, people are like, let's talk about how work's going. You're going around the circle and they get to you and you're like, well, work is terrible and my boss is terrible and all of these things. They're automatically making the jump to, oh, that's our church. That's our leaders. That's all these things.
Yes. Okay, wait, time out. Not only is it unwise, okay, it's just not good leadership.
No, it's not.
You don't share the dirty laundry of your church with the flock.
Yep.
It's super tempting, but you're going to get in deep doo-doo if you do that.
Right. And I think at very minimum, what you're going to do is say that doesn't ever get back to anybody. Okay, fine. But what you're going to do is you're going to undermine people's trust.
Bingo.
And you're going to undermine their feelings about their church. And so you can't go there. That's a big no-no.
It's a big no-no. And this is one of the things that is so unbelievably unique about church. All of my friends are there, but I can't talk about the realities.
Right.
In addition, if we can go off-roading for half a minute, can I tell you that one of your key relationships cannot be your spouse? Now you're like, wait a minute, Josh, you just said you can't say that. We need our spouses. Oh, we absolutely need our spouses. But if I can peel back the layers and I can show you a pound of flesh that got ripped off of me and show you some scars, I'll share them now. I was first brand new at the church, and I knew better than to talk to my best friends who went to the church about the drama at church. I decided to absolutely unload and tell my wife everything. That was a terribly poor decision.
Right.
Here's why. My wife has nowhere to go with that information. She can't all of a sudden go into my work and go, hey, can you explain more about this? You said this to my husband. Can you tell me? She has nowhere to go. So in her brain is now this ricocheting conversation about how they mishandled her husband. And she is now torqued at them. And she's never, ever, ever going to come to resolution with that, even though I am going to come to resolution because I had 2 other meetings about it. Are you feeling me?
Yes. This is like a secret tip for people in ministry. Like, you need to know the level at which you share with your spouse. You're not keeping a secret from them. You're not holding part of your life away from them. You're protecting them.
That's right.
And actually what you say to your spouse when you come home from work is slowly but surely shading their opinion of the church and of the leadership of the church. Bro. So you have to be very careful about how you are presenting the place that you work to your spouse, because it's her church too,
brother,
or his church too.
Brother, I got to tell you, it's like most of the stuff in lead ministry, like most of the courses, most of the content is a ton of my failures that I have rectified. And now I'm like, hey, everybody, don't do this, really. And I have been on coaching relationships where all of a sudden the person that I'm coaching, they said, hey, my husband can't even sit in the main service anymore. And I knew why. And I said, oh, can you tell me why? I knew why. And she goes, well, he can't listen to the senior pastor any longer because he knows the truth. And I said, okay, what would that truth be? I already knew. And she's like, well, the way that he's making decisions and the way that he's allowing me to be treated. And I'm like, okay, now I get it. We have to have our spouses, but it's a very delicate balance because now her husband is soured inside of that church. It's very complex. This is why ministry is so unique and why it's so like ripe for burnout. Drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's your freebie for the day, podcast listeners. We didn't even plan on talking about spouses, but guess what? You need people outside of your church and likely outside of your home. Okay, here's the second one. You need another group of outside people. It's people outside of your town. Guess what? Your Christian community. Listen, you might be like, I live in a huge multi-million. Bro, the Christian community is very small. No matter how big your town is, there are plenty of people who switch churches within a town. You got to be cautious. You cannot back talk, bad mouth, dog out your church. As the Bible says, like a little bird with wings, so goes the talebearer. You with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You can't even like meeting someone in the grocery store and sharing something is too much for getting back to your church.
That's right. Or maybe even somebody who's a pal of yours and they're a ministry pal and you meet them for coffee because you share a similar role, but they go to the church down the road. Caution, friend. Slow your roll.
They can be a relationship in your life. Those sorts of people, but you got to be careful about what you're talking about.
That's exactly right. And so, therefore, the whole point of this, Bill, the whole point of this podcast is you need a place where you can let your hair down. You can like literally take off your armor, show your sweat, show your scars. You need somebody you can be absolutely fundamentally and ultra vulnerable with. If you don't have that, you are bound for burnout. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's the third one. You got to find somebody outside of your denomination. Folks, if you're in a denomination, guess what? Pastors change jobs within a denomination. In addition, people have relationships across denominational districts. You got to use caution. You have to have friends who you can be completely truthful and vulnerable about the dysfunction of your church way the heck outside of any reach of your church. Amen and amen.
Yes. I've been burned. I've been burned by this one, actually.
Can you tell us?
So I'll tell you. So I had a ministry friend within the denomination who contacted me. He kind of a leader. And he was like, okay, so, how are you doing? And what are your ministry goals and all this stuff? And I had this great conversation with him. And then like a week later, my senior pastor comes to me and he says, so like, it sounds like maybe you're looking at, leaving us and becoming, overseeing your own church. And he's like, saying all these things. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't what I shared. It was how that denominational leader interpreted what I shared. Like my sort of like ambition for building ministry and my excitement for leadership translated to him that I wanted to scoot on out and I wasn't satisfied. Yes. And I wasn't satisfied with, what was going on. And I was like, that's not it at all. That's not, no. So I've been burned that way.
Yes. Well, the funny thing, Bill, is thank goodness for a healthy senior pastor who came directly to you. I know plenty of churches where the senior pastor is like, ooh, insider situation. I now know the inside track for Bill. We're moving him out.
Yes, absolutely.
And he wouldn't think to come talk to you and go, hey, like, what's the story here?
Yeah.
Thank goodness he talked to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's amazing because he saw that maybe my world was too small in that season, and he expanded my world within the church and gave me more to do. So he's a great leader that way, for sure.
What a great leader. Because watch this. Yeah. Listen, this is not what happened to me. I had all of these ambitions and dreams, and they were threatened by my ambitions and dreams. And that's another whole story for another whole podcast. But bottom line, guess what, gang? You need people outside of your denomination. So here it is in ministry. We must have people outside it. We have to have outside people. That's outside of your church, outside of your town, outside of your denomination. Great. Heed these words, oh podcast listener. Heed these words. But guess what? There's another set of people. These are inside people. Now, these aren't people inside of your church. They're not inside of your town, and they're not inside of your denomination. So who are they? Well, Here they are, inside your niche profession, inside your level of ministry, and inside of your comfort zone. So we got to have people that are outside of your church, outside of your town, outside of your denomination, but they have to be or should be inside of your niche, inside of your level or size of your church, and inside of your comfort zone. Let's talk about each briefly. Inside of your niche. Hey, listener, are you a youth pastor? You need to be around other youth pastors. Are you a children's pastor, outreach pastor, a hospitality coordinator? Are you women's director? Every role, these niche or niche roles, have unique challenges. And therefore, you need people who understand those unique challenges around the unique role that you have. What do you think, Bill?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because those people are going to know exactly what you're dealing with. They're gonna realize, oh, like we all, when it really comes down to it, a lot of these niche roles all like eventually find the same friction in the same
That's
problems.
Right. That's right.
And so to have somebody to talk about that, somebody who understands, is paramount.
It's paramount. As the Bible would say, I read this in a pretty reliable source, there's nothing new under the sun. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, so your senior pastor is starting a third service and they expect you, children's pastor, to come up with a brand new set of 48 volunteers in 4 weeks.
What? That never happens.
Right. And so all of a sudden, that happened to me. And the 4-week thing wasn't a joke. And 48 was actually on the slight side. It was like, 60 plus volunteers that we had to find immediately. This was not open for discussion. This was get it done. And so guess what? There are other children's pastors who have dealt with this. And so I need a pocket of people that are safe, not in my church, not in my town, not in my denomination, that I can go, hey, other children's pastor, that's absolutely insane. Do they understand what they're even asking? I need a place to say that.
It's so true. Yes. Yeah. I like that idea. Like, you have to have a place where you can let your hair down, where people can see your sweat, where people can see your frustration and what's actually going on. That's right.
And so you need somebody inside of your niche or niche profession. Now, here's the next one. You need somebody inside of your level, your level of ministry. Guess what? Different stressors come with different sizes of churches. Are you in a church of 150? Okay, there are problems within that. And I can tell you some of them. One of them, Bill, is that you've got about 17 people that can truly volunteer.
Right.
It's like, go find more people. And they do a quick 360 and they're like, nope, we have every one of them and we have no other hope. Everybody else is completely unqualified. So that's unique to a church of 150. Now, if you're at a church of 4, by the way, those are real problems. And somebody else of a church of 150 is going to be like, I know. You need the exclamation mark behind somebody else saying, I know. That is soul identification. I have to have that. Church of 450, different story. You got different problems. Church of 1450, different story, different problems. Now, all of a sudden, it's not like, oh, the people at the 1450 church are better. Are you kidding me? No. They just have unique problems that are unique to that size of church. Now, Bill, have you ever encountered this, we both are in the same profession, we're both in the same niche, but we're on completely different pages because of the different size of your church. Have you experienced this?
Oh my goodness. Talking about this makes me want to beat my head against the wall because I've sat through so many affinity things in conferences, in denominational gatherings, where I'm like, why are we talking about this? Because I'm just into such a different level than other people. And I don't mean that as in better. I just mean a different one. Right. And so you just sit there and people are talking about things that your church solved 20 years ago or 15 years ago, or just not even thinking about or dealing with because you're just at a different, size.
Bingo. I went to this group and I went to it one time. I know, intuitively, I know that the rest of these people that were a part of this ministry gathering inside of our community It had some acronym. I don't know what it was. And so it was all the children's pastors of all of the churches. And I came, and they were helping one another solve problems that were universes away from the problems that I was experiencing. And their problems were real, but I got to tell you, the palpable level of anxiety that I had with the problems that were pressing in on me as I was a brand new children's pastor of a very large church, never having been in ministry, and I inherited a complete disaster of a ministry. Listening to somebody talking about the problems of their church of 250, it wasn't that those problems weren't real and they weren't valuable, but those other churches of 250, they were a good fit for them. I didn't have anything to add, even though I could add something. What this group didn't have is they didn't have anything to add to me, not because I was better, but because they didn't have any context.
Right.
So
yes, absolutely.
I need people outside of my church, but I need to make sure that they're in a similar level of ministry, which, by the way, that does not mean that I can only associate with people at my level. No, I have all kinds of friends all over the place. There are unique things to church ministry, period. But it's going to be helpful if I have people who are experiencing some of the same challenges because of the same size. Okay, I'm sorry, I got to go here. There is some people that I do coaching with, and they're like, okay, we're a church of 1450, and we're getting ready to add a third service. And okay, I said, wait, can I just push pause? They said, yes. I said, okay, let me guess. You have 8:30 service, you have an 11:30 service, and everything stops in the middle, and everybody does adult Sunday school and kids Sunday school. They're like, how did you know? And I said, because this isn't my first rodeo. Your church is that size. That's typically the model. And I said, and what's going to happen is your senior pastor's adding a 9:30 service. So you're going to have 8:30, 9:30, and 11 all identical, correct? Yeah. I said, okay, can I just tell you something? Sure, I'm all ears. I said, here's what you're going to experience. It's going to be, this is the first prediction. This is the second prediction. This is the third thing that's going to happen. And they're like, really? I said, yes. So here's how you solve some of those things, knowing that that's coming. And then like a month later, they're like, oh my word, are you a prophet? No, I've just done this for a long time. I know exactly how this is going to play out. They said, exactly what you said played out. So my point is that you need people that have been through some of those common scenarios. So number one, you need to find people who are inside of your niche, but you need to find somebody who's inside of the level of ministry. Now, the final one is inside of your comfort zone. Stay with me. You need to find safe relationships, including considering gender, age, stage, theological similarities, and tons more. You need to find people who you can be friends with and you're comfortable with. Let me give you an example. If you are this is a stage of life thing sometimes. Maybe you're new to ministry and you've got a young family. Well, talking to people who have a young family and are trying to balance toddlerhood, and your wife is now loading up the kids and schlepping 4 kids to church by herself. Okay, let's talk about that. How are you solving that? Well, that's different if it's somebody who's a single person versus somebody who's married with 4 kids. Now, both of them are great people, but they have different needs. And so therefore, a really dialed in fit for having a strategic ministry relationship so as to stop burnout is they're a kids pastor, they have a young family, and they're a church of this size. Common problems. Amen?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. It speaks to alignment. The other way to do this too is like get somebody with those same sort of affinities, but they're just a little bit ahead of you.
Bingo.
And so then they can kind of like, they can say, oh yeah, we just dealt with that in this last season, and here's what we did. It didn't work, or it did work, you know?
Yeah. Or it's the dad who's like, oh, can I give you hope? And the guy's like, please. He's like, guess what? A day is coming when your kids will be able to snap themselves into their very own car seat. And you're like, oh. And so then it's like, I mean, just talk to me, Bill. Isn't that like such a moment of hope where you're like, oh my word, everybody can strap themselves in. That is a benchmark of parenthood.
It's such a benchmark, yes. Or put on their own shoes or get themselves dressed.
Right. And so then all of a sudden, somebody who's out just a little bit further, they're not in the mire with you going, this is hopeless. No, they're saying there is hope, right?
Yeah.
So you need people who are similar to you. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be lockstep, but I got to be honest now, Bill. I have done coaching with many. I could tear up on this one. I could get teared up and I could get angry. And here's why, because I've coached far too many wonderful, godly, strategic women who have been boxed out of leadership rooms, and they have not been allowed to sit at the table because they're a gal and they're a chick and they're a female. And I am so over this. I'm serious. I'm so frustrated by this. And this idea, yes, I'm going to go off the rails. I'm going to just shoot as straight as I can. I am not into this idea. The Billy Graham rule, which says you can't be alone with a woman anywhere. Okay, that's great for you, Billy Graham. That is not to be superimposed on me, Josh Denhart. Now, I'm going to operate in intelligence, but this idea that, well, our church abides by the Billy Graham rule. Well, one of the negative unintended consequences of the Billy Graham rule is this young lady who is the outreach director at your church, she gets excluded from time exclusive with the senior pastor because somebody along the way said that the Billy Graham rule applies to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so guess what? Yeah. Women in ministry, you need to, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm going to change it through this podcast. I'm not going to fix the women in ministry problem that plagues you. I'm sorry, but I'm going to identify with you and say, this sucks. And this is real. And I hate it for you. But you need other women to rally around yourself. Okay, Bill, if you need to cut that out of the program, you're the editor, cut it out, but I think it's important.
I think it's good.
Well, you need people. You need people inside and you need outside. So here's the deal. We're going to close this podcast by coming up with our third big bucket. Let's do it. This is going to be like, well, what do you do about this? You know you need friends that are outside of your town, denomination, and your church. You know you need people who are like-minded like you and are insiders in that way. So what's some strategic inputs? What do we do now? Well, here's your assignment if you are willing to accept it. Your assignment is to work hard this week and find a circle of people, your inside circle of ministry support. I think it's critical, Bill.
Yeah, it is so critical. And these things are actually a huge lifeline. Like, having that circle is a huge lifeline when you hit seasons of ministry that are tough. We have to have that network of people to fall back on.
And you need to have it before the hard times come.
Yes, absolutely.
And guess what? When is your hard time coming? Don't know. Guess what? It's coming.
Yep. And I would just imagine that there is somebody out there right now who is going, yes, this is my missing piece. This is what I've been waiting for. Like, I didn't know I was missing this. If that's you, do the assignment this week. It is going to be hugely beneficial to you.
That's right. So you need to find this insider circle. People outside your church, people inside your unique framework of ministry. But how do you go about doing it? Well, one, national conferences, that's actually a great place. And I took my team to these things, Bill, and I would say, now, I never pull the boss card. They're like, you never pull it. And I said, so this isn't really a boss move, but I want to make sure that you understand. I want you to extract as much as you can from this conference. And they're like, okay. And here's one way that you do that. Every breakout that you go to, don't just sit there. I want you to turn around, look to the left, look to the right, turn around, introduce yourself, and ask people, where do you live? What do you do? And how big is your church? And then strike up a conversation before the breakout happens. And I'm telling you, I have people who are my friends 20 years later because I networked at a national conference and I was intentional not to be a little isolatory, nobody really wants to talk. Everybody wants to sit here in awkward silence. No, be the networker. And you can find friends. Mm-hmm. So national conferences are a great place to do that. Hey, guess what? Paid coaching. I'm telling you, I have had people who are like, Josh, you are my paid big brother because you do ministry coaching with me. And I have regular time that I spend talking to you, and you're my secret weapon And Bill, you just got, now I'm not saying that you share the whole thing, but you just got an email from somebody who you do one-on-one ministry coaching through leadministry.com. Can you briefly just share just a touch about that? You know, save the names and the places, whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. This is a gentleman who is been very active as his church as a volunteer, but now he switched his career into doing ministry as he's responding to the need of his church. Yeah. And it's really cool. And he's jumping in and he's like, man, between you and Josh and these things, he's like, I feel like I'm just growing and learning so much. And, you know, for people, they often need just a lifeline.
Yes.
To like have who is in your life speaking to you about how to solve the problems that are right in front of you.
Bingo.
And that's what's happening with this guy. And it was really encouraging to hear that, like, hey, the things that we're offering, the coaching that we're doing, lead ministry in general, is really working to do what Christ has called us to do, to build up the body of Christ through equipping this leader. And so that's hugely valuable to me to know that. It's really cool.
And so, Bill, you are that guy's outside your church, outside your town, outside your denomination, but inside of a niche, you are his person. So hats off to you. God bless you. And so that's why we do ministry coaching. Is this a shameless plug for ministry coaching? I don't know. Not necessarily. I'm full. I can't take anybody else. You're full at this point, right? We both are tapped out. And on the website, it says, at this time, this person is full. We have our fill, but we have other people. But the bottom line is, I don't care if it's me. I don't care if it's Bill. You need somebody, and sometimes it is okay. By the way, I have hired coaches for my life. And I'm like, okay, by the way, where your money is, there your heart will be also. As soon as I paid this person, I'm like, okay, I'm all in now. I'm going to extract as much as I can. So paid coaches are a way to find friends. Truth. By the way, social media affinity groups. If you're a part of a closed social media network, you can find friends that way. I'm going to challenge you though. Like you being on the closed social media Facebook group for your kind of niche area, that's not enough. You need to find people within that. You can be like, hey, I've seen you post a lot. Could we get on a Zoom call? And then are they a fit? Okay, if they are, that's great. If they're not, move on. Like, you're not signing up for life. And by the way, we'll close with this. Bill Van Kirk. You are a huge piece to my life. You've told me that I'm a huge piece to your life. I've never met you face to face. Can you believe such a thing?
I know, it's wild. I know we've looked at dates where you're near us.
Right.
And it just hasn't worked out yet. So it's like, I mean, we've known each other for years at this point. Yes. We've never met face to face.
Right. And we do major work together. We're partnering together in ministry. And so guess what, podcast listener? You can have significant, lifelong, great friend relationships, and you don't ever meet them because of the great wonders of technology. So gang, here's the deal. We're grateful for you. You need friends. Hey friend, you need friends. And you need them outside of your church. You need them inside of your unique circle. Well, gang, we want to help you prevent burnout. And one of the ways to do that is get yourself a circle of friends. All right, gang, we will catch you guys on the next one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Lead Ministry Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and visit leadvolunteers.com for more episodes and resources. Thanks for listening.